background. So does Aaron, my pal Aaron. He's
Yeah.
also my favorite, one of my favorite colleagues. Don't tell Joe. But anyway,
He's probably not watching.
yeah, he's probably not watching.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to have Aaron introduce himself. And Aaron, tell us a little bit about your role as a media creator. I'd call you a brilliant videographer because you're responsible for some of our video, but I'm going to let you explain it in your words.
Awesome. Well, yes, my name is Aaron Howard, and I am the media creator here at WorldVenture. It's a cool, fun title because it means nothing and a lot of things at the same time. And I do appreciate that part of work. It literally is what it sounds like. And so I deal in pretty much anything that has to do with media. Now, Nikki is our resident graphics guru. and so, again, I've been able to keep a lot of that off of my plate at the moment. But yeah, everything from one capturing pictures and videos of different events and different situations, trying to understand how one we can just use media as a ministry tool and how we can equip not just again our staff and our company to be able to use media to send out on social media right, or any other avenues to be able to engage with partners, with supporters, with again people who don't know Jesus, teaching the staff as well as our missionaries how to do that well, and yeah, just being able to use the artistic gifts to be able to uh, make cool stuff because we get a lot of cool stories. That was one of the things that drew me to WorldVenture was like as an artist, this is like I told Joe, like an alley oop. Like the stories that we get and that we come in contact with what God is doing in the world, like it's you can't make these stories up. So to just be able to package them and retell them makes my job very easy.
Yes, somebody had mentioned on here that you're a stud. So I know who that is since I can't see anything.
I don't
Um,
know, maybe hopefully not the person I said was not watching. So
yes. So let's talk about what's been going on in the world. 8 billion people in the world. Um,
significant.
8 billion people in the world. And so when we think about the blog post, get this, we had a 14-year-old write the cutest blog post ever on Mary Magdalene's journey, missionary journey. As you know, we've been doing a series on that. And that series is basically showing how the disciples of Jesus, what they would have written to supporters back home. So,
Yeah.
hey, if you're out there, and by the way, feel free to interact with us as we're talking. This is about you as well. Um, but yeah, so she wrote this great piece, and one of the discussion questions on the blog, and one of the things we also encourage you as viewers, when you read our blogs, we have discussion questions, and you can discuss them on your social media with your own people to as a way of making disciples, or you can leave a comment on the blog, and it is monitored.
Yes, we
So
like to discuss, as you see.
yes, we like to discuss. So so one of the questions is what amazes you about Jesus? So Mary
Mm,
Magdalene talks about in the blog post that Megan wrote that it was amazing seeing the tongues of fire appear above them, and just seeing the shock of Jesus ascending up into heaven. I mean, they got to see these things in those times, and you and I, we don't get to quite see it as out there as they got to. So, I mean,
mm.
what amazes you about Jesus, Aaron?
One, and that's part of what's cool about this post in particular is that it captured this amazing thing, and right, that with the point of communicating, um, hey, from a perspective of like, hey, someone who's getting to see and encounter the work of God, communicating it, right, and so to see that this was, Megan is 14, right? It's like to see young people, right, grab onto the Lord, and not just be grabbed by Him, Lord, but be moved by Him, even as I see it in my own kids' lives, right? To just be able to see, um, one, the purity and the hold that Jesus has, right, from a pure heart, and to see when when we're unhindered from cares and concerns of the world, just quite frankly, what He can do with a life. And yeah, man, to my own life personally, right, is a testimony to what happens when Jesus does something with a life. Whenever he can take, I heard a saying once. I forget who says it, and so I'm sorry, whoever I'm paraphrasing. But it was I saw Jesus turn. I didn't get to see Jesus turn water into wine, but I got to see Jesus turn alcohol into milk. And it was based on the story of a believer who had come to Christ, who was an alcoholic, but came to Christ and turned his life around, and so now is a provider for his family. And so to see the way that Jesus still today changes hearts, changes minds, changes trajectories, changes nations, right?
Mhm.
How his fingerprint in his hand is not just on all of creation, right? But still on the hearts of men, transforming them. Uh, that's something that, again, I pray I never get over.
Amen to that. So on that, we have we've got a lot of churches out there where one of the most intimidating things that people can find is sharing their faith with others.
Mm,
It's easier. In fact, I had someone approach me one day where they were saying, "Hey, you're the missionary. Why don't you talk to this family that God has placed in my life?" And
mm,
so when I did a poll on my sending churches Facebook, and I asked them, what keeps you from sharing the gospel with others? So,
mm,
I mean, and the variety of things was they don't feel ready, they don't feel confident, and there's been other ones. There's a lot of fear. So, what is your take on that?
man. One, how do I put this? Being a person who has wrestled with all of those feelings, right? Feeling inadequate, feeling like, again, there are points that I don't know where, like, well, what if they ask this question, or what if they ask that? Feeling, well, again, just what if they're hostile to this message, right? How do I respond properly and lovingly? How do I even set it up, right? Communication and just talking to people at times can be hard, and I think that we do underestimate that aspect of things. And so I'd almost argue that that's where to start, right? Is understanding that Jesus is for people, right? And sharing Jesus with people has less to do with having this theological construct that you feel that every point and nuance I can debate and counter and, do that. It's like, no, like, look, see that person the way that Jesus does, and just engage them. That doesn't mean that I'm going to come, off the top rope, with scripture just out of the blue. It's like, and again, this is a cool something I've learned from WorldVenture. Sometimes it's really as easy as, man, meeting people, engaging them, and asking, how can I pray for you? Right.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um, and
definitely.
so really just practically, functionally getting to know, again, Jesus is specifically for that person. And so getting to know how Jesus is for that person would require you to know Jesus at all. But that's the part. You just know him at all. And from there, it's just getting to know that other person. Right. And so again, that's kind of just been the approach, and what's helped me. And again, just those small things, being the willingness to engage people and the intentionality to understand that, Jesus does care for them.
I'm into that. So we opened a Twitch account, and
Ha.
the jokes went around. And hello to everyone on Twitch. Oh, by the way, the person who said,
Yes.
"Aaron, you are a stud," that was Bobby Brown. So,
Oh, Bobby, what's up? I was just talking to my wife about Bobby Brown catching snakes in Florida yesterday.
oh
And
yeah,
so
that is awesome. So yeah, Bobby Brown says hi, and welcome Peter Melbourne. He's from Africa.
Hey,
Um,
Peter.
yes. So hey, let's talk about Miss Hampton. We can't mention, of course, first names in this person,
Right.
but on our November 9th post, it was one of our most popular posts, and I want to thank everybody for commenting on it. But it's back in November 9th. So Miss Hampton actually uh, talked about ponytail bands as bringing her
Mm,
encouragement. As we know, the missionary journey can be kind of stressful a little bit, but
mm,
there's a lot of joys in it. No different than maybe what Paul and Silas and all those others went through.
yeah.
Um, so basically, she found she was had an emergency, family emergency, and she was just all stressed out, and she forgot her ponytail band because she's a runner. And she basically, through the chaotic week, she'd been praying for provision, and she looks down and sees a ponytail band,
Mm,
which it's a cute little story. But it reminded her of Matthew 6:25 through 34. Don't worry about tomorrow, for what you will eat or what you will wear. Your heavenly Father knows that you need these things. I'll take care of you.
yeah.
So there were a lot of great responses, and there was a lot of people that were reminded of how God provided for them in their personal lives. I mean,
Mm,
I have to say one of my favorite audiences is the Facebook crowd, because they certainly know how to contribute to our conversations online, and
yeah.
the last few weeks have been pretty good. But I remember as a kid, it was pennies for me, finding that penny on the ground. I
Okay.
don't know about
Yeah.
you, but that was me. So what is one thing, and one question she brought up, what is one thing you like to do, Erin, to maintain some semblance of mental and spiritual order during times of chaos? I mean, it's not like we don't have chaos in our jobs, do we?
That. Yeah. Um, huh. So one, I probably could do a much better job in times of chaos, right? As chaos is one of those things that it'll creep up on you, and you don't know that you're in the midst of it until like is there. So that said, um, this is, and again, I'm going to bring this back to the ponytail band just a little bit. So, and tell you an interesting story, because just like your penny and just like that band, a little bit is my wedding ring. So, my wedding ring has a very particular and interesting story. As after I got married, I had a very nice ring, and I went and got it, and I went on honeymoon, and immediately, not even a few days after being married, we were going swimming, and it falls off, lost into oblivion. And so it's like, well, so now I'm a newlywed with no ring. So again, I'm a broke young man at this time, and so what do? I go to Walmart and I buy. I'm looking for a ring, so I'm just like, I just need something to like hold the place until like I can figure something out for real. And so I see this little ring. It's just a little metal ring, and it's got a little tiny cross just engraved in it. It was probably like $15. Well, 6 years later, this ring is still here, and I'll tend to run my fingernails through the grooves in the cross, right, constantly. And it almost is just like it grounds me, right? It grounds me, it brings me back. And the fact that it's on my hand, like I need something. Like I know last week you and Quincy talked about, like what are those things in your house that like just call you back to Jesus? Like, no, I need a bigger dose of Jesus constantly, due to the chaoticness of my particular style of life. And so this is definitely one of those things that just, again, um, if I don't know God as anything, it's provider. And
Yes.
so, so yeah, it's the constant reminder that he's with me, that we'll be okay, that no matter how the situation looks, like, yeah, he's here to stay, and we'll get through
Amen to that. So we had a post from Irene Moda. She's in Brazil. She deals with a lot of poverty down in Brazil, and she has a camp that
it.
she runs. And we posted about November 8th. We posted a picture of a young man named Marcos. And apparently, he
Mm,
started. He was being discipled by this camp and by Irene and her crew,
yeah.
um, as a teenager, and now he's leading ministry at the place
Mm,
leading, which don't ask me to pronounce that name, but sorry. So what she wrote was lives are being impacted from generation to generation. So
Yeah.
in fact, he went beyond that. He wasn't just leading a group or anything. He's organized and led the camp as well.
Yeah.
So in
Man.
your experience, in your church life, in your experience, where have you seen the impact of people being mentored in the same way so that they lead later in life in other ministries?
Ah, uh, again, and I hope I'm not sounding selfish from this, but a lot of my stories as it relates to this do come from like my personal experience.
That's okay. Yes, it's
and
not
so
selfish. Share.
man, this is one of those cool stories to where my life is almost a testimony to that fact, right? Again, and man, so much of what I am and what I've been able to become today is, man, because I was blessed with man of God, Carlos Willis, my mentor, my big brother, like my father in the faith to this day. And the fact that he was able to take a gangly young hooligan, right, and take me under his wing. And that looked not just like coffee and conversations, which it was, but it looked like taking a camera and going to the streets, right? Going to the streets and doing interviews, right? To engage with people. It looked like taking videos at church, right? It looked like taking pictures, which again was something that he didn't even know that I had an interest in before then, or let alone a knack for. But once he definitely saw, right, my passion for it, my drive. One, it pushed him, and thank God that he was able to keep pushing me when I was still just being lazy and not wanting to do it and coming up with all the 50 million excuses as to why to not show up, why to not do the work. And he kept pushing me. He kept giving me opportunities, even when I'd fail. He keep giving me opportunities and picking me up. And again, not to say that I didn't realize that God had something at work in the midst of this, but literally I wouldn't be able to have this opportunity to be media creator for WorldVenture or have grown as an artist had it not been for a man of God investing in me with the skills that God gave him, and now putting me in a position to where now I'm able to teach, again, missionaries and, again, other young men and women in church how to use these same tools, how to use these same things, which again is cool. It doesn't really even seem fair to the glory of the Lord. So like, yeah. Yeah, so
Well,
that one was a good story because again, even though I can't do the beautiful flowery dance, this like half dance, half like martial art, which just blows my mind. It's like again, that's another cool thing to where it's like, man, like let the Lord use your passions, let the Lord use the
yes.
things that drive you, and let Him work through that, right? Because there's awe in that to bring it full circle.
Exactly. And there is such a value of mentoring, and there's such a generation gap between younger and older that we need to find ways to bridge it. And the way to do that is just to make room in your busy schedule for times when God wants to interrupt us.
That part.
Yeah, that part. When we're
Yep.
so busy with kids or school or anything like that. And our missionaries, they mentor regularly around the world, and there's a lot of great stories that come out. We try to share them when we can, but we don't always get to, sometimes due to security reasons.
Right.
But so speaking of making videos, we're in the middle of this Send and Sustain campaign, and your role in that is very important. I don't know if the rest of you viewers have seen it, but we had a bunch of nice black and white photos. That is Aaron's photography, and but because you have to tell a visual story, you have to share what what headquarters in Colorado does in order to send missionaries all around the world. I mean, we just had a training of missionaries last week, which is why we didn't have a WorldVenture in review, because I was there too. And
We're very glad to have you.
and so training missionaries, it takes a lot of work and a lot of planning, and it's very much needed. And because we don't want, I knew someone who was just, here you go, here's an account, to receive your donations, but you're on your own as far as raising support and being able to go someplace in another country without any kind of preparation. And with Send and Sustain, we're trying to illustrate those stories of how WorldVenture prepares people who feel the call to go, prepares them to go, and doesn't just leave them in the field to figure it out on their own. There's a whole network of leadership. So basically, one of the things that like Rob and Lisa Atkins, I know that we talk about them a lot, but they do a lot down there, and they often are sharing their posts with us so that we can share their stories as well. So one of the Psalms she mentions was Psalm 104. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his counts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. This is Thanksgiving month. Next week is Thanksgiving. I don't know when that happened.
Yeah,
Christmas.
Just like
what?
That. Just like that.
2023. So Rob and Lisa, who work in Bolivia, actually, deal with hospitality. And one day I hope to experience her cooking. She was grateful for so many things that she's able to toggle between where she lives in the U.S. with her husband Rob and Bolivia and still run things, especially with technology enabling that. She's just grateful that she's able to serve and worship in her own home church when she is home. And we did post a picture of her coffee pot. That's the first thing she unpacked. She knows her priorities well.
Oh yeah, good priorities. Yeah. Cheers to that.
Yes, exactly. So, gratitude is a kind of an important attitude, but we shouldn't just focus on gratitude just for the month of November and then go on Christmas and so on and so forth. We should always be grateful, don't you think?
Oh, 1000%. 1000.
So thank you for everyone for joining us today. It was a great conversation and great to see Bobby and others that I saw pop up.
Yes, thank you guys.
I want to remind you, Giving Tuesday is next week, it's November 29th.
November 29th.
Yeah, I'm still speeding the calendar ahead way too far.
I mean, again, it's just one of those unfortunate realities of getting older.
And if I walk into the office one of these days and forget why I'm there, you can just remind me because I'm old.
I'm starting to forget myself, so no.
So we have a very important campaign going, and Giving Tuesday, we've got, we'll be posting more on that soon. But if you got the email this morning, we encourage you to make a gift and partner with us in sending missionaries all around the world and to sustain that work all around the world. That is different than individually supporting a missionary. So, but I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And we will see you next week. Next week, we are featuring Sandra Thompson, which is the pre-field mentor. Yes. And the sock lady. We both have that in common. So it's their Thanksgiving edition, and it's our crazy sock edition too. So thank you, everybody.
Now that said, next episode, I want to see some socks. I want to make sure
I'm
requesting. Yes. All right.
Sandra assures me she will not wear the ones with the holes in it.
I can't promise the same, but that's why you guys are on for that.
So anyway, thank you.